Hi everyone, great to be here. I'm Rajan. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask our panelists questions for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to all of you. So have your questions ready. I'm going to just maybe give 1 minute on each of our panelists who've actually come from different parts of the region to be with us, and then we'll get right into it. So Jan Metzger, Jan's actually a big Sri Lanka fan, has been incredibly supportive to the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem, has actually been my partner Praji is somewhere here, or there he is, has been very helpful to us for at least a decade, if not more. But he's actually the head of Citibank in Asia, and actually spends an enormous amount of time in China, as well as global tech, taken many companies public on NASDAQ. So he's nobody better to actually talk about most capital markets, most tech markets in the world than Jan. PK. PK Gulati is Mr. By the way, somebody just messaged him saying GCC. Who can learn anything from GCC? Because they thought it was Global Capability Centers. GCC is actually the Middle East. What does it stand for?
Gulf Cooperation Council.
Gulf Cooperation of India. Yeah, he was showing me a message. He's getting all these tweets saying, what are you talking about GCCs, man? I mean, first of all, by the way, GCC is a good thing. You can actually, they employ like 2 million people in India. But PK has been in the Middle East for a long time, lives in Dubai, and very, very active investor. He started companies, deeply connected in the Middle East region, but also does a lot in India. And then Vineet is the founder of Avishka. Avishka is one of the largest venture capital firms in India. It's the largest impact fund by far in India, also very active in Africa and other places. And Vineet has seen the Indian startup ecosystem for decades. So he's, there's nobody better to actually talk about India. The way that I'm going to run this is I'm going to have each of them talk about their respective ecosystems that they're familiar with, and then we'll have 1 or 2 questions at the end on maybe some of their thoughts for what Sri Lanka could do as the country tries to build out the ecosystem. So Vineet, I'm going to start with you. 2011, India had 1 unicorn. 2015, India had 5 unicorns. Today, India has, 117 unicorns. 2019, India had 1 publicly traded startup, venture-funded startup, over $1 billion market cap. Today, there are 5 venture-funded startups that are over $10 billion market cap. Public market cap, there are about 30 companies between over $1 billion public market cap. Everything's changed, right? But it didn't happen overnight. So maybe Vineet, what you can do is, for the audience, I don't know how many of them are familiar with each of these ecosystems we'll talk about. So the first question is, I'm starting with you, Vineet. Just what is the current state of the Indian startup ecosystem?
So first, thank you for having me here. My romance with Sri Lanka started in 2015, 2016. Since then, I've come many times. We have made some investments. And at that time, India's ecosystem was not as vibrant as today. So let me tell you where we stand today. We are world's 3rd largest startup ecosystem, 150,000 odd startups, 117 unicorns, roughly 1,550 locally registered venture funds. Total commitment to these venture funds is around 150 billion. Last year, 1,000 deals were done in India. 1,000 deals were done. Roughly $12 billion was invested in startup ecosystem. 300 IPOs happened in India, which is how you create liquidity. And those 300 IPOs roughly raised another $15 billion. So that's really where the entire ecosystem stands as on today. But as Rajan actually mentioned, in 2014-15, when I moved into Sri Lanka, we used to struggle to defend India. And India's honeymoon started with a prediction that we have a 400 million people, middle class, and a lot of money moved into 2005, 2006, 2007. And while the world was very gung-ho on India, India was not necessarily prepared to accept that money. So that money that came into 2005 actually struggled to find any exit whatsoever for a very long period of time. And so in 2014-15, when we came into Sri Lanka, we were still struggling. We were very badly struggling as an economy that had a lot of promise, but very little to deliver. And today, where we stand, it's a remarkable journey, just from scale, size, depth, etc. I'll just stop here and let Rajan ask.
Thank you, Vineet. And next we'll get to what really catalyzed each of these ecosystem. Now I'm going to go to China. I know Jan can't talk about anything geopolitics, but I don't know how many of you read. China has banned NVIDIA chips from being used by the AI companies. Man, talk about bold. I think this morning we heard a lot about being bold. Now that is bold. But we're not going to go there, Jan. We know you can't, given your role at Citibank, you can't talk about geopolitics. But just give us a sense of where is the Chinese ecosystem. Just bring it to life for us.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's a huge honor to be here, and I also grew up in Sri Lanka, so I'm incredibly fond of my home here. So, look, the Chinese ecosystem is unbelievably massive. There's a new unicorn created pretty much every 5 days in the country. And when people look at the sheer size of the companies created, whether it's ByteDance, Ant Financial, Alibaba, Tencent, these are companies worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The speed and size they approach is truly massive, and the profitability is amazing. So what caused this and what came to it? I would attribute it to a number of different things. The first thing I would say is when China started down this journey 30 years ago, they relatively quickly got pretty good internet, pretty okay roads, and nothing else worked. Like nothing else. So you could leapfrog massive amounts of development. So a favorite example of mine is outside Shanghai and Beijing, there are no family doctors in China at all. So if your grandmother is sick, you've got two options. You take her down to the local pharmacy, or you stick her on the back of your motorcycle and you drive 4 hours to an emergency room in a hospital. That meant that there were 9 billion hospital visits. Now, that's not because people get more ill, it's because for every minor thing you got to go to a hospital. So when MedTech came out and you got telemedicine for the first time, one of our clients is doing 1 million consultations a day. Just wrap your head around that number. 1 million doctor live consultations.
This is one online telemedicine company, digital health company?
Just one digital health company doing 1 million consultations a day between 1 million real patients and doctors servicing that. And so the scale and the leapfrogging is massive. And this happened in mobile wallets, this happened in internet, this happened in shopping. And the estimate that we at Citi had was China was about 10 years ahead of the West. So e-commerce penetration 10 years ahead of the West, fintech, mobile wallets 10 years ahead, etc. So there was the leapfrogging event. The second thing that I would say is the infrastructure and the government was quite supportive to innovation and to growth. That was quite interesting. And then the third thing to not be underestimated is the unbelievable entrepreneurial culture of China and the sheer grit and hard work all the way through the entire society. I am actually married to a Chinese entrepreneur. She makes jewelry. When there's a big order coming, the entire family is in the warehouse packing jewelry.
Including the head of Citibank Asia.
Yeah, so I'm there packing, being told to pack faster, including our kids. But my point on this entrepreneurial nature is, and I'm not saying this as a positive or negative, I'm just giving you some color on it. The default workday in normal companies is 996, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. The startups work even harder. When I meet with clients in China, it's completely typical for me to meet the management team of a large company at 10 p.m. That is a totally normal meeting time for them. China has 7 national holidays a year, 7.
And how many does Sri Lanka have? So China has 7 national holidays. How many?
Close to 30 in Sri Lanka.
30.
25 to 30, depending on the year.
I mean, those of you that live here probably think it feels probably even more, right? Like every time I call Praji, it's a holiday here. So
yeah. The other thing which I do think is interesting in the entrepreneurial nature, and this is a bit counterintuitive, many companies do, when they grow, need to go through long periods of unprofitability. But Chinese entrepreneurs, many of them, they never whine about not raising money, and they view cash flow as paramount. They are always thinking about how to get to cash quickly, and they will pick business models if they haven't raised money that gets them to cash. And that is something that I think is very unique, and where they think so much about cash flow that they almost also breach a lot of the rules. When I meet Western entrepreneurs, they're like, we cannot have any humans. All our ad sales have to be online. One of your former employers, Rajan, very, very focused on everything scalable, everyone online only. if a Chinese entrepreneur thinks, if I hire 1,000 sales guys with clipboards, I can sell more ads, I can get to cash flow, they'll hire 1,000 sales guys. So the hunger to get to cash is quite unique. So those are some comments.
Terrific. We'll come back to China. All right, PK, let's go to you. PK, so PK has been talking to me about the GCC, well, we'll stick with GCC. Okay, sorry, it's in the Middle East. GCC ecosystem for a while, and I'm like, yeah. And then Talabat goes public, right? It's the food delivery company. It's a 10 billion market cap, and it goes public in the Abu Dhabi exchange.
11.2.
11.2 billion. There you go, and it keeps rubbing it in because we obviously didn't invest in it. So let's talk about, PK, have you talk about what's the current state of the ecosystem? And then our next question, maybe you can start off, Jan talked about a little bit. What were some of the triggers? When did it start happening? It's clearly evolving very nicely.
So compared to the other two examples, the total size of GCC is probably 70 million people. So, I hear a lot of things about, and I heard this in Sri Lanka this time.
22 million, you have 70, million. Right? 70 million.
22 million people. I think the number of people is a deception in the sense, when you look at certain ecosystems, the number is not, and in this case, this is true. People have looked at the GCC more as a source of capital because of the oil money, which traditionally it has enjoyed. But again, like what you said, Indians did invest in India. It is true. Even the GCC guys did not invest in the GCC ecosystem because they only invest when they can get the money out. And till the ecosystem proved a point that it was returning money is when the money started going here locally. The ecosystem is small. The countries are far more expat-focused. Certain countries have more expats than their own original population, like the UAE. And the ecosystem is, the way we call it, is new. Entrepreneurship is exceptionally old. Especially cities like Dubai have been built on entrepreneurship for the last 60, 70 years of its existence. When we look at it from the point of view of tech innovation, just to give you numbers, for a 70 million people, we've got 11 unicorns that I know of, locally homegrown unicorns. That ratio is pretty good compared to the year. The other big thing is they have, over the time, understood very importantly that it's neither population nor money that is the most important thing to build ecosystems. They've understood that enabling infrastructure is a far bigger pull for the best people from the world to come there. So if you talk about AI today, like everybody is, UAE punches in the top 3 nations.
By the way, last week you guys launched a model that's like SOTA now.
So you're like, and not just that, the example is ChatGPT launched 10 days later on Hugging Face, and a suspicious model comes up, which was called Falcon 40, which was 10 times the size of ChatGPT 2.5, the release number, and it was open sourced. And everybody's looking at it, and then they found out that it was built in Abu Dhabi. So if it was released 10 days later from ChatGPT, you should imagine how early they were investing in it to build this. So just to give you an idea, so they've been smart enough in that. So that way, that ecosystem is exceptionally different from all the other ecosystems. On the B2C level, they have been exceptional. I'll give you examples of 5 Indian companies, which are Lenskart, Policy Bazaar, Cars24, Urban Company, and First Cry. All of these are major Indian new generation companies. Some of them are public. Some of them have just gone public. Most of them don't make profit. Their UAE or Middle East operations make profit. Because what they realized, and this is the reason why you see a whole number of international companies. In fact, I was very surprised yesterday when I went through the venture engine, portfolio. Most of them talked about having a base in the UAE. And they are startup companies, very early, small startup companies, because it punches far above its weight. So that's the state of the union at this point of time.
All right, terrific. Vineet, let's come back to you. So what were some of the, as you look back, what really made it, actually, it's very interesting. So I moved from the US to India in 2005. 2006, I joined the Indian Angel Network, which at the time was just forming. In 2006, we had 2 companies pitch the whole year to the leading angel network. And then 2010 or 11, Praji and I started angel investing here, and we launched Venture Engine because we couldn't find any companies to invest in. So we said, okay, let's do a business plan. Competition companies will come to us, right? So actually, like maybe there was a 5-year gap between the 2 ecosystems, and now when you look at it, of course, things are quite different. But what really what really made the difference as you sort of think back to, and especially if you guys can, all three of you, talk a little bit about what can Sri Lanka sort of take from that and, for the local ecosystem here?
So I started in 2001 with $100 trying to invest in startups. At that time, all the startups used to ask me, how much interest will you charge? The concept of equity, that somebody will walk up to them and give them money itself used to shock people out of their wits. So till 2010, except microfinance, which suddenly actually came out of nowhere and scaled up, where my initial successes came, everything else was still very difficult to find entrepreneurs, very difficult for entrepreneurs to actually think about big ambitious plan, very difficult for us to explain how we will exit. So I used to write in my presentations, pray to God as an exit strategy.
Pray to God, exit strategy.
It was actually my
Praji and I are still praying to God,
I used
as
to
some of our
formally
LPs
write,
know.
when my LPs used to ask, how will you exit? I used to say, I'll do this, and pray to God, because that's the one that most likely will work. Then came the current regime, the new Prime Minister, and I think you heard in the morning from Vijay, that the Prime Minister started by saying, I believe in startup. Now that was a big surprise. Between 2001 and 2015, I had raised $100 million. 100% of that money was foreigners. So no Indian, and I started off with Indians investing into my fund, but these were Indians living outside India. And then mostly foreigners. So the Americans and the Europeans participated in Avishkar. Not a single Indian ever put in a single dollar in Avishkar till as late as 2017. And from 2017, I have raised more than 50% of my capital in India. So what changed? Because the government actually and the Prime Minister actually stood up and said, hey, we want to support this ecosystem, he started with a fund of fund, a single fund of fund. Nothing consequential, $1 billion. At that point of time, we all thought that's a very large amount of money. Just to give you an idea, in China, a 2 gigahertz cell manufacturing facility consumed more than $1 billion. So for a 140 crore country actually putting $1 billion as a fund of fund seemed very inconsequential, but it has triggered something which is quite amazing. One, it triggered creation of people who know how to manage funds. Today, India has 1,550 registered funds, and they manage
1,500 venture funds, right?
1,500 venture funds, which actually have a firepower of around 150 billion. So this is all locally now, all AIFs, we call them alternate investment structures. More importantly, the government then went ahead and supported creation of around 550 incubators, 300 odd accelerators, a massive push towards academia to participate in it. But more interestingly, Indian entrepreneurs moved from necessity-based entrepreneurship, which means you are forced to become an entrepreneur because there are no jobs, to actually aspiration and innovation-driven entrepreneurship, which completely changes the equation. So it was not building for India, now it is building from India for the world. And that thought process also has been actually last 3, 4, 5 years. So this is actually continuous change of benchmarking, largely being driven by the infrastructure that was being created. And then, of course, it did not stop here. The government played a very big role in creating public infrastructure that allowed formalization of entrepreneurship. So we have Aadhaar, Jan Dhan, which is essentially opening bank account for every Indian. And it suddenly made every person in India, that huge population, participate in the formal economy. That formalization of entrepreneurship was a massive change. Because till that time, we used to hear about very large numbers, but reaching out to those large numbers was very difficult. And then, of course, the infrastructure, the roads and other things. But the digital infrastructure that India has built is quite uncomparable in some sense. And a lot of our success actually came from there. So some of these were real structural changes that allowed India to prosper.
Vineet, maybe just talk a little bit also about the IPO market, because as investors, for a long time, India produced absolutely no returns. And today, it's one of the best performing exit markets in the world. Maybe talk a little bit about that, because I think one of the things that Sri Lanka really doesn't have is a very active capital market, IPOs. I think last year there was one IPO in Sri Lanka. So talk a little bit about that.
So again, this is something that I have been speaking all across the globe, especially in the global south. India started transforming when Indians started believing in the potential of India. So when Indians started investing, they didn't come first to invest in people like me. They actually went to the stock markets and started investing in the listed equities. There was liquidity, there was risk of up and down, but they started participating. India was largely an FPI, foreign investment-driven market. And then suddenly, FPI started withdrawing and Indian stock market still continued to grow. And that started happening, what we called financialization of savings. Indians used to keep their money in gold or under their bed or inside the saving bank account. That money has started going into building new companies in India. And just to give you an idea, 300 IPOs took place last year, and those 300 IPOs raised another $15, $20 billion of capital locally. And that is a significant amount of capital coming largely from Indians participating in it. So it's the mutual funds, it's the local people massively participating in fueling this, which allows private venture capital. In fact, if you read India's economic survey, which happened last year, we had a massive dollar outflow. That was because a lot of private equity guys sold their stakes and took dollar out. And the chief economic advisor to the prime minister actually noted that that flow of dollar is a virtuous cycle being created, because the dollar that goes out will bring $10 back in, because now people know how to take money out of India. So the IPO market, largely driven by Indians excited about their own country and investing in India, actually has created it. And some of this is actually the leadership of the country believing in it, demonstrating by putting infrastructure, backed by entrepreneurs believing in building large organizations, and then IPO markets booming to create exits, which is a whole virtuous cycle, presence of which actually creates value. And I think, therefore, the role of every individual in the country to create India an exciting market should not be forgotten. It's not just because of policies, it's because of the confidence of the people in their own economy.
Great, thanks, Vineet. Jan, let's go to you. I think you talked about several of the factors, right? You talk about leapfrogging, you talk about the work ethic and a bunch of other things. What are some of the things that you've seen over China over 20 years or 25 years, especially if you go back to the early days, right? Like Jack Ma used to say, $4,000 per capita. That's when e-commerce really took off. Interestingly, Sri Lanka is at $4,500 per capita, but e-commerce here is virtually non-existent. In fact, we backed like 2 or 3 e-commerce companies that went belly up. Just couldn't get traction, right? Partly because there actually wasn't enough capital, follow-on capital and so on. But what are some of the other, you've obviously been coming here for a long time. What are some of the things that you'd like to see Sri Lanka do, both the government, there were several things announced this morning, like a small fund of funds and so on and so forth. But what can we learn from China, given Sri Lanka's constraints?
Yeah, sure. So look, and I think these are just some thoughts and all in a positive way. But one thing that I believe India benefited from as well as China is a reverse brain drain. In particular, in the early days of the entrepreneurs in China, even Jack Ma did stuff in the United States before he came out. Joe Tsai, basically Canadian. So you had a whole host of a first generation of returnees. I've met many Sri Lankans that are very keen, have worked abroad for 30, 40 years, that are keen for some kind of an investment visa or something in order to come back. And I think there are smart, intelligently successful Sri Lankans all over the world. Making it easy for them to come back and build companies is one interesting thing to think about. I think another thing to think about, and this is always harder, and this is something that all of Europe suffers from much more than Sri Lanka, but is that failure is not a bad thing. So straight out of university, I worked in a startup that I owned a big chunk of. We went spectacularly bankrupt. So I was sleeping under the floor of the office, climbing out the back window to avoid the landlord, all of these fun things. Best 4 years of my life. Learned everything that makes me a success today. My father was beyond horrified. For those of you that know him, every day, if I ever visited home, he would cut out newspaper ads for jobs that he thought were appropriate for a young man. Internal consulting, Bosch. Finance team, Mercedes-Benz. Deutsche Bank intern. Those are the things. Maybe
you ended up at Citibank running it.
Yeah, I know. Maybe he won in the end. But the point, in some sense, that I'm making is entrepreneurship far, far, far more fails than succeeds. And actually, one of the problems that we all have with events like this, we celebrate the successes a lot. We should celebrate some failures. We should get some guys up here and say, you know what, I massively failed, but now I'm doing other interesting things, and here are things that I learned along the way. And I think that's an interesting thing. And the entrepreneurialism that brings is an exciting thing. So that's another thing to think about. And then the final thing I will say is, and I think people are thinking about this a little bit, but the simpler the legal frameworks around startups, the better. And there I see really huge differences in the administration of different places. So my wife owns small, tiny companies in Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe. The way she gets treated in Hong Kong in a government office is unreal. Like if she shows up and says, "I'm so sorry, I'm 4 years late with this license," they're like, "Oh, that's not good. Here's the fine you have to pay." They're in a mode of helping solve the problem, move on, and get her back to business. In Europe, you get a 2-hour lecture, then you get sent back out because you have the wrong paperwork. I think the smoothness of the rules also helps. Those are some thoughts.
All right, terrific. No, those are good ones. Let's move to GCC. It actually has happened like in less than a decade, right? You guys have gone from there were no startups there like 10 years ago. I mean, look, the Middle East has always been full of entrepreneurs, but the kind of venture-funded startups we're talking about, what were some of the catalysts? What role did government play? What role did large companies play? What role did global venture capitalists play? Just talk a little bit about the different roles.
So, there's been a very big advantage that region has had compared to other places. They had very little baggage. Their populations were small. Their inherent, national people were small. They could be looked after. They had the traditional cradle-to-grave support systems, which could be looked after. Plus also, they understood very quickly to create that enabling environment that you're talking about, tax-free, all those things were very attractive. And they understood that talent was what they were lacking, and they needed to get that. And that is the reason why they went all out to get the best people to come there. A good example is the Golden Visa. And my doorbell hasn't stopped ringing since the time they announced it, because a friend of mine, is literally coming every day and moving there and looking at it from that point of view. So when you look at all this, this becomes the perfect storm. So they ended up making an enabling environment. They made it tax-free. They also had money for the right kind of investment. And then they also made immigration easy. People could look at it, and we laughingly call Dubai the cleanest suburb of Mumbai, because you can literally live in...
It is. Cleanest, and now it's also kind of closer to get there than some other cities in India.
So when you look at it from that perspective, that's a great example of putting all the things in line for creating an environment where entrepreneurs can build what they're trying to build. Talking about IPOs, you talked about the Talabat IPO. Talabat listed at the same price as Swiggy listed.
Yeah, it still boggles my mind.
100x the size of Talabat, and Talabat makes more profit on each delivery than Swiggy makes as the cost of the GMV of the delivery. So that gives you an idea of what the business works on. So all that happened. They also were very, very attractive. This fund of fund things, we heard the same story from the UAE government. Mubadala announced a $150 million fund of funds and a $100 million direct investment to kickstart the Abu Dhabi ecosystem. And I saw a lot of our friendly VCs from all around the world come and look at that. And they invested the 150 literally immediately. But that did kickstart a situation where now you see funds based there. So they created a jurisdiction, people are coming there, and then they're making the investments. So now the 3 IPOs in the pipeline that people are talking all about, one of them you are investors in as Peak 15, Tabby. So Tabby, and now Noon is going public, which is actually the bigger e-commerce company there. So when you start looking at it, you start seeing that they understood the flavor that they wanted. They focused on that flavor. It is one of the more vibrant ecosystems. You have seen it, the startups from the base to the biggest ones. They find their niches out there. They've been very focused on regulatory compliance and regulatory, I would say, adventurism to a certain extent. Blockchain, those kind of companies. Fintech, they're far ahead of time. They've been putting out licenses which central banks in other parts of the world are not really ready. India is facing all kinds of, hiccups, start and stop. UAE at the moment, or Saudi for that matter, are doing far more interesting work to allow startups to actually start things or be innovative. Urban Company is a great example. Urban Company is actually exceptionally big in that region, and they've been able to create a market where labor arbitrage was not a great thing. In fact, labor was expensive, which is what they're, but more importantly, getting labor, keeping them legal, keeping them nicely and legally was actually an expensive thing, but their business model is actually exceptionally profitable despite that. So they have realized those kind of things to happen. First Cry went in as a mother and child, product, e-commerce. They had 6 of them before that. These guys went in, they built a supply chain, and today, one of the biggest areas for them to kind of grow in. So what this gives me a kind of, let's say, optimism, is you see that place having found its niche. They understood they had the money, but they did not spray the money like many other places. They ended up investing it like an investor should. And today you see a very vibrant ecosystem that is there. And the basis of that is these layers of enabling ecosystem. Exactly the point. If you have something wrong, you go there. Their agenda is to get you back into the system, not to keep you out of the system if you go wrong in some way. They'll be pretty strict on the rules. Now, taxation is coming, for companies if they go beyond a certain level of profit, which I think is a fair thing for people to pay for the infrastructure that they're in. But at the same time, what you see is the other layers of ease of living, the quality of life, the connectivity. You look at the airport, I bump into you in Dubai airport while you're flying somewhere else. So those kind of things have actually, which look completely funny, have actually been exceptional in accelerating that. And you find the best nationalities out there. 120 nationalities that I know of exist there. They talk about 180 nationalities living there. So it becomes a center of that kind of a thing. Now again, I don't carry the Emirati passport, I carry an Indian passport. But I find that as home. I think that's a very, very, very big achievement for any place to do that. And this is across now. Now Saudi Arabia is following up, which is a far bigger economy. Qatar is fighting that game, which this competition, the inter-GCC competition, is exceptionally good.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, with that, I think we have 27 minutes left on the clock. We're going to open it up. Do we have some mics? Ask any question you want of the three of them, of me. Let's see here.
Hi. I'm Lucky from, and I am a founder of a company called Businessman 360. And I'd like to start with what the previous gentleman, the previous panelist mentioned about domain knowledge. I think for the last 2 decades, I have not been in the software industry. I was being involved with manufacturing and retail, giving me really good domain knowledge about service, retail, and manufacturing. And later on, I jumped into IT and then started this company. As a first product, we released a product for automation, product for lawyers, and we have now successfully onboarding clients from US and other countries. The question is, now that I see that the product is getting to a proper product to market fit, how do we, when we reach that point where we have to reach out to a VC, how do we connect with VCs, and how do we find that contact?
What are you building now? What's the product?
It's an automation for client and case management for lawyers.
For lawyers, lawyers.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it an AI native product?
AI native product. And we just,
so like Harvey and Lagora, those kinds of products.
Yeah, just released a week ago, and now we are getting good traction on that.
What is good traction?
Already we've got about 5 clients.
Paying customers?
Not yet, but will be for sure, because we've given free credits for them to use about a month, and then thereafter they will probably progress to being paid customers.
Got it. Vineet, you want to take that, and then I can...
I think you've just heard of different ecosystems. Ultimately, capital is interested in those who are looking to scale. You have a global market, you have a product that you have built in an ecosystem which is very challenged. So I think you should first look for local money, and then you can actually look to jump over to India or GCC or everywhere. Anybody, if you can demonstrate that you have sticky clients and you will be able to scale this up, I don't think so it will be a very difficult sale. You have all the right things. You have AI, you are actually looking at global communities and global markets. Capital is actually available. See, capital is never the most intelligent thing. So if capital follows great ideas which have scalability potential, and your conviction. So if you are convinced, you can demonstrate that, and then capital will follow you rather than lead you. And so whatever you have done, if you start chasing for capital, and it's not very difficult, you have Google, you can look around and see any startup ecosystem taking place. Lots of people like us would be there, and you have to just catch hold and convince one. That's one of the biggest benefits of being an entrepreneur. You just need that one success.
Yeah, let me maybe add a little bit to it. Look, there are, I think, over 100 funded legal AI startups in the world today. Harvey is the most funded. Legora is the second largest funded. Our firm, we probably met 60 of them. So your number, somewhere between let's say those are the 100 that I know of. So maybe you're between, call it 150 and 300, okay? So keep in mind, you're now playing in a global maxima game. Okay, you're not playing in right? Legal AI, there are 5 sectors that AI is disrupting. Legal happens to be one of those 5, right? Like the others, obviously number 1 is coding, healthcare is number 2, and so on. So then the question becomes how do you, that's the reason I asked, when you say traction, by the way, traction in SaaS used to mean I launch, it might take me a year or 2 to build the product, but once I'm quote unquote general availability, traction used to, top quartile performance in a SaaS company, pre-AI used to mean 0 to 1 million in 1 year. Today, top quartile is 0 to $10 million of ARR in 1 year. Okay, so I think, so it's important for all of you, if you're building a global company, to keep in mind that what are the global benchmarks, right? Because that is what investors will ask for, right? So if a legal AI company came and pitched to me and said, I launched 3 weeks ago, I've got 3 pilot customers, I don't have any revenue yet, I'm like, okay. So what?
Come back later.
No, meaning so you have to now say, okay, how are you going to either tell me, oh, by the way, those 3 customers are the 3 largest law firms in New York, and I'm going to replace Harvey. All of a sudden, I'm on it. Wait, you're going to replace Harvey? Wow. Or you tell me, you know what? I'm going after a part of the legal ecosystem, the legal industry that nobody has touched before, with a value proposition that is very unique, right? So I think the first thing is, how do you position your product so that it's somewhat unique? By the way, there's no such thing as unique, right? Every idea has been done before. It's just like a new version of it. So I think that's number 1. Number 2, I would say to Vineet's point, look, the best, this is for all the founders who try to fundraise, right? The best way to fundraise is not to fundraise. What do I mean by that? You become a story. You have traction that people want. You have other people talk about your company, right? The best companies that we have invested in, they were generally not fundraising. Right now, there are 3 companies in India that I really, really want to invest in. They don't want to take our money. Not because part of it is strategy, hey, I got runway, why would I raise? Come on. And every week the valuation keeps going up. Every week. Okay, 20 million pre, 30 million. I'm come on. What's the price, right? So how do you become that company, right? One, of course, if you have traction. Now, you don't have traction yet. By the way, so traction is you've got the benchmarks now, right? All of you as entrepreneurs, you should know these benchmarks. In your respective, if you're a global company, if you're a local company, what does great look like? I think then how do you become a story? How do you create a narrative? Actually, very few founders do this, right? They're not on social media. They're not on X. They're not on LinkedIn. You'd be amazed. If you want investors to notice, just be out there. Be out there with your story, with your narrative. There's this whole notion of building in public. I'm not a big fan of building in public for most companies, because if you found something truly unique, you shouldn't tell anybody. But let's say in your space, right, legal AI is sort of a discovered asset. So that's number 2. I think third thing, to Vineet's point, I fully agree, is I would first start by seeing if you can raise capital locally. Otherwise, there's some really great global incubators. If you're trying to build a global business, Sanjeeva is not here. I think what Sanjeeva has done is absolutely incredible. But I think it's really hard to build $1 billion company market cap, let alone $10 billion company, sitting in Colombo. If you want to build a global company, okay, you can build an apparel company. The textile companies have shown it, you know, all your fantastic sort of companies have shown it. But I think if you're trying to build an AI company, global AI company that is going to be gigantic and going to win globally, I think it's really hard to do it out of Sri Lanka. It's fine to start, but you've got to, so what I would do is I would talk to local investors, but there are lots of incubators, accelerators around the world. You should apply to them. I don't know, very long answer to your question, but I thought I'd elaborate on some of these points.
Can I give one perspective?
Yeah.
If your lawyers really love your product, they're talking to venture capitalists all the time. You'll get no better recommendation than getting your clients talking to their clients saying, hey, this thing that I just did for you, Mr. VC, I use this really cool tech.
Actually, that's a great point. If our lawyers called us and said, we love it, it's better than Harvey and it's better than Lagora, we're like, whoa, calling him right now.
The other point, if I can add, is to actually look at your vertical. Law does not have a single vertical. You're talking about, people talking about is corporate law only. There's far bigger areas of law. Also, law is regional and country specific. So there could be verticals like that. So you could actually have trained models which are far better in certain jurisdictions and become very, very, very sticky in certain areas. So that's another model that I'm seeing now of people coming in language-based. For example, Arabic law is very different. So people are coming out with those
good point. Yeah, just differentiation. Okay, who's next? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one there, there's one here.
Yeah, I'm Charaka. So it was a very interesting panel discussion. I have one question looking at different regulations in different areas. Let's take, if we take Singapore, Dubai, and all the well-performing areas, what kind of regulation that you wish that you had, but none of those even well-performing regions in the world globally doesn't have, but this you wish if we had this sort of regulation.
What do you wish for? Maybe one wish in each of your... Well, yeah, what one regulatory wish do you have?
I think you don't wish regulation. You don't want it. So ideal situation, nobody, because regulation is holding you back. So first you learn to run before somebody holds you back. The best is no regulation. Regulation is always to create friction. So it's a necessary evil. And that's how it is. So whatever government wishes do it, less they do, better it is for you.
Yeah, in fact, regulation always follows product. So in most cases, we used to, when we were doing Dubai Future Foundation, one of the things that we used to always talk about, we do things which are pre-regulation. So we actually looked at blockchain when it was pre-regulation. We already looked at 3D flying cars, whatever, everything was pre-regulation. As long as you can stay in pre-regulation, as he said, is the best place for you to be. But when regulation comes, nobody ever likes it, just saying.
Look, I'll say one thing, and this is mostly coming from advising large companies. As you get larger, there's one undeniable trend in the world, which is the most important counterparty for any large business in the world today is the government. And that's going to continue and get deeper and deeper. And so having smart and positive relationship with the government is a really important thing. There's absolutely no point fighting that, and it's actually good to recognize it and to find ways to build a really positive relationship with the government in a way that goes across administrations. You can't be loved by a current administration in a way that the next administration hates you. So you've got to be smarter about that.
Yeah, great point, Jan. There's mics over here, or there's mic over there.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to bounce off from this regulation question as well as what Mr. Jan mentioned regarding failure of his startup. So in terms of the right to fail or having that openness or ability for a startup to try something new, venture out and have that right to fail, I think there could be some possibility to get some regulations or take away some regulations to Mr. Vineet's point. So can you give us some insight of maybe from GCC countries or other parts of the world where not having certain regulations in the right to fail has helped the startup space in those countries? Thanks.
Can I take it?
Go ahead.
I think the removal of fear of failure has more to do with culture than has to do with regulations. regulations against you taking somebody's money and not returning it, some form exist everywhere, will exist everywhere. That is going to be the case, correct? Nobody wants to lose money. But more importantly, it's the culture of actually giving somebody a second chance makes an ecosystem better. If you look at it, that's the biggest difference between the East and the West. In the West, you know, people actually put on their LinkedIn profiles, I tried this, company failed, closed, went to the next one. In fact, people go and hire people who are failed CEOs or failed entrepreneurs because they know how to run profit and loss. They understand what it is. On the other hand, if you go down to an ecosystem like even India, it's getting better, but it is actually, you know, the stigma of failure is very high if you go towards the East. So I think we should work towards changing culture to do that and allowing people to do the next one. I tell people, when I did my company, Aegis in India, when we sold the companies, when we got our personal guarantees back, all the founders had to put our personal properties as guarantee to raise money. Today, if I say this to an Indian founder, they laugh at my face. They don't believe me when I tell them that. And the truth is, this is how systems change. This is how it goes towards where the cost of failure gets reduced. And I think all of us have a responsibility to kind of push that. If somebody lost the money, tried his bet, didn't work out in a fair way, we should not be allowing any law, regulation, or for that matter, a moral regulation to police that.
Can I add one thing to that, if I may? And this is very, very practical advice. Stay in the white. And what I mean by that is, as your cash flow goes down, the temptation to do dumb stuff rises exponentially. Don't do it. I think if you look at all of the bad frauds in the world, they were either too much greed when it was going well, or making bad decisions when things were going bad. And really, the moment you cross a line, it's hard to go back because you're compounding it. I think one of the big famous frauds for this reason was akin to riding the tiger and not knowing how to get off. Don't ride the tiger. It's much, much better to own up and say, hey, things aren't going well. We're going to have to shut this thing down or whatever it is. Don't do anything stupid, because that is what buys you the right to try again. The moment you go into the black, you're kind of done.
Yeah, maybe like India has done lots of reform that has been very positive, but one of the things, it's still very hard to shut down a company in India. So if you ask me, right, like it takes 2 years it's impossible. No, but in the US you can, you know what I mean? Like US has made it super easy. Like, you know, like you just shut it down. So I'd say just making it easy. I mean, I do agree, like a lot of it is actually 99% is just culture. But like just making it easy to like shut down a company and then, by the way, those of you that are founders, venture debt. Fortunately, I don't think there's any venture debt in this country. I think venture debt is like cancer, except for NBFCs. That's different. So, because, you know, as a startup, see, the thing is, there's a high likelihood you're going to go out of business, right? And if you take debt and you have liable, and don't sign up for personal liability. Just don't sign up for it, period. That's it. Don't do it. Okay, there's a question here. Can we get a mic over here? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. There's one there. We have 11 minutes, so we can take maybe 3 more. Go ahead.
So my question is, just assume that we have the exact product market fit, and we have in the right market, and there is a set of people there. So we have built the product, and
what's your product? Tell us who you are. What are you building? We don't like theoretical questions. We're all investors. Okay. We don't like theory. We like applied. So tell us who you are. What are you building? And then tell us a question.
So my name is Rajan, and I build the AI agents for other businesses. So we are the bootstrap company. So currently I have identified the problem in the logistics. So I wanted to solve that problem. So it's like still in the initial stage of that. I'm doing the research. So my question is all about, like, I can build the product, but I wanted to enable the distribution all around the global. So like after building the product, how can we enable the distribution to the global?
So how can you get global distribution for an AI agent?
Yeah.
What's the vertical?
I don't get it.
Who are you building it for?
So it's for the logistics market. And
logistics market.
Yeah, for people who are delivering it's mainly into the people who do the delivery part.
Yeah, I would say, look, I'll start and then these guys can add. Like, you know, if you're building enterprise AI, build it around what I call design partners. Find 3 companies where this is a real problem build it for them. You can give them a preferred rate. You cannot even charge them for the first year. I would not build a product and then look for distribution. Right? Like the benefit of, I mean, being in, like just, they can be Sri Lankan companies, right? Like pick the largest logistics companies and like try to make sure, because the reason you want to do that is because you want to make sure you're solving a real problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like because there's engineers and technologists, I don't know how many of you are, I assume a bunch of you are. One of the biggest risks you have is you like to build things. Right? Like I can't tell you, even we make the mistake occasionally of funding founders. Like they are world-class engineers. They just don't like talking to customers. So like find design partners, build your product around them. Once you have it, now if you're selling to enterprise, there's only one way to do it. It's enterprise sales, right? Like the reason that you're seeing companies like Cursor, fastest $0 to $1 billion of revenue company, is because it's PLG, right? Product-led growth, developer motion. So basically consumers, developers, motions, you can go really, really fast. They're bottom up. SMBs are kind of like developers, right? You can still have an organic, growth, SEO, GEO, generative engine optimization, things like that. Ads would work. But if you're going to sell to larger companies, there's only one way. It's enterprise sales. So you have to think about outbounding, get leads, go to events. That's the motion. But I would say for somebody like you, I mean, really try to find a couple of design. And until you find some design partners, I wouldn't even start building. I mean, you should have some ideas of what you're trying to solve, because that then gives you, because when you have a design partner, this is really important, you're then now solving a real problem. Right? It's not like theory anymore. You guys want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I'd add one quick thing. A lot of the coolest companies I've ever met actually just approached a company and spun something out. Go to a company that doesn't want to own warehousing, take over their warehouses and build cool tech around it. And it's quite interesting how little that gets talked about. And in particular, when you look at large organizations, they have thousands of things they don't want to be doing. And that's actually a really great starting point. Go to a bank and say, we'll do your KYC in a tech-enabled way and take it over. That's one thing I would add.
And even if you have a product and you're going out for distribution, the first question you would be asked is who's using it, okay, or who you have built it from, like who's the domain expert on that one. So in that sense, you don't exist without that. So if you haven't worked with the right, partner to build it, you probably won't have a product. One of the things that, there was a research which was done where they tried to interview, all the founders which had failed startups. And they tried to narrow down what was the reason for the failure. And they went through everything and they've sliced and diced it pretty thin, not saying, hey, we're not able to raise money. No, there's 1,000 reasons why you're not able to raise money, was not a reason. So which was the most common reason, which was finally isolated as the reason why they were not able to succeed? They were building a product which nobody needed. In fact, they were building a product they thought their customer needed. So go away from that. I think that's the minimum.
So you have a solution that doesn't have a problem. That's basically what it is.
He's not saying you do, but he's saying like, just go get some customers.
I got it.
Your question is actually hinting towards that. So you probably have a very good solution which doesn't have a problem in front. Start the other way. Put the problem in front. That requires the logistic company with whom you'll have to work.
Thanks. Hi guys, Hiran Imbuldenio. I think many of the panelists here have either in a personal capacity or institutional capacity invested already in Sri Lanka. So you'll have already taken that leap of faith. And I'd love to hear your reflections on that, what you've learned from your investment in Sri Lanka. And today in 2025 in Sri Lanka, it's arguably one of the best kind of macro environments that we're in terms of new investments. Obviously, the world has changed as well. So I'd love to also hear, are you more or less likely to invest in Sri Lanka again, given your experience and given the current situation and the reasons why?
Yeah, maybe we'll start. Vineet's made a few investments here. You haven't yet, but you've seen the ecosystem, and maybe Jan, you've been coming back and forth for decades.
So $4,500 per capita makes you more attractive than India, actually. We are at least $2,000 behind you. I think you have a very high level of literacy, very capable people, very capable in terms of other. I think more ambition and more resilience probably will excite, and I think what we understood when we came in last time and we invested, what we realized is the ecosystem has to grow up. And I was here in 2017 and I'm here in 2025. My colleague Sanchayan has been here far more frequently. I think, as I said, we want to see more IPOs happen. That's actually very, very critical because at least there should be some level of local liquidity and some level of depth coming in by local investments. Not because the kind of beautiful buildings that have come up, there is a lot of capital that is there, but that capital probably is not investing in the growth of local ecosystem. I would love to see more people excited about investing in their own ecosystem. So those are the two things that will make us excited. You have everything going for yourself except those two things.
Well, I invest in very early stage companies, and the only thing that's tangible at that time is the people building the companies. So I always say people actually invest in people. The rest of the things are never ducks in a row. The ecosystem is rebooting. Now, it'll take some time to align. We can tell you all the best practices this country does, that country does. We should have more money, we should have less money, we should put more money here, there, fund of funds, all these things will be talked about. But they will take their organic time to align and become ready as any other ecosystem you're looking at. But there's a cohort of people sitting here, they'll probably have their time today. Their time will not be tomorrow, their time will be today. So my suggestion usually always in this, and which is what I feel, good founders will find the money, will find the investors. So my suggestion to the people is think bigger. That is one thing which we have seen, at least I have noticed in the last, is people are very limited. Somebody used the word, they have the island mentality yesterday. I think we need to go beyond the island. The world is the island we should look at. So I think bigger. That's the message to everybody. Be clearer in your opportunity. Think of it from a point of view like Sanjay from WSS. Why can't you get up in the morning and think, I'm going to own the world, rather than saying, hey, what should I do? So that is the second thing which I see. Third, the founders yesterday, I looked through the whole venture engine portfolio. I was one of the judges. The founders in each of those startups impressed us. Each of them. So which basically means your talent level and stuff is high. So yes, I would invest in those people. Would I invest them as a Sri Lankan company here or looking at it? I don't know yet. But I will surely invest in those founders. And my personal view would be if they would be thinking big and would be thinking more in terms of having greater domain knowledge and working and not thinking of a Sri Lanka problem or thinking of a global problem.
So I'm blessed. I have only invested in Sri Lanka via Prajit right here in the front row. I would definitely do it again, and I'm hungry for more. So I don't know when he's raising his next fund, but I am all game to continue to support.
Great. I think, well, firstly, Jan is being very generous. Both Jan and Chris, and we have several other, few other LPs of, I think, Prajit's BOV Capital Fund that we created. Look, I think, firstly, Sri Lanka has to show exits, right? I think even in India, it took a long time, 20 years to have exits. I think the IPO market opened up, and now it's one of the most interesting exit markets in the world. I mean, you know this. Money in without money out is a terrible place to be. So right now, when it comes to startup investing in Sri Lanka, that's where Sri Lanka is. Lots of money in, no money out yet. So either through IPOs, through acquisitions, so I think that's one. I think second, look, there has to be domestic capital. So I think the fund of fund, I really hope it happens because there have to be more venture funds here. Because, you know, the nature of the market is that it's very hard for even an Indian VC to get excited about the scale until there's growth breakout, right? Because just winning Sri Lanka is like not that interesting simply because the market is small, right? So I think you got to have global. Like that being said, look, as PK was saying, I mean, the venture engine yesterday, there were 12 finalists. I mean, the founders was incredible, right? DabSense, I don't know whether the founder is here or not, but it's an AI company focused on healthcare. This is a global product. It is a global product, has every shot of being a multi-billion-dollar company. And the minute this company makes a little more progress, it'll have huge amounts of interest. And I think the key question is, can it make that enough progress for it to become a... I mean, this is a Sequoia, Andreessen, Lux Capital company. There's no question, right? And I think the founder is going to move to Amsterdam, which I know this morning was all about keeping founders here. But maybe in the early days, it's okay. They should move to Dubai. They should move to the US. They should move to other places where they can get that boost, and the R&D will all still be here. So I would say, look, at least for me, it's been 15 years since I wrote the first check, and now it's been dozens and dozens of companies. I have never been more excited about the caliber of the founders, but we need to see exits. We need to see more domestic capital. We need to see a stable government for 5 years, not 1 year. And we need to make sure that when the country starts servicing the debt, it is serviced. Right? So this is still very much a movie in progress. But I think, look, if you're building a company today, there's just never been a better time to be building a company. It's just an extraordinary time in the world to be building companies, and I think the talent here is just phenomenal.
Rajan, can I end with one just more? If you want to do a comparison with a country and an ecosystem, compare yourself to Estonia. I just came back from Estonia. The total population of Estonia is 1.3 million people. 1.3. I'm sure the population of Colombo is far bigger than that.
Yeah, I think so, probably.
Okay? That's it. They've got 10 unicorns. And the unicorns whose names all of you know, from Skype to TransferWise to those kind of unicorns, if they can build it when they don't even get light for 8 months of the year, being in the Nordics, okay? On one side, they're surrounded by Russia, on the other side by Belarus. They'll always have a think about when they'll have to run. If they can do it, I'm sure Sri Lanka can do it far better. That's what you should compare yourself to.
All right, with that, thank you, everyone. Let's give the panel a big round of applause.